And okay, and then shoot. Okay, just a second. Okay, go ahead and start letting people in.
I woke up bright and early on the morning of the No Kings March this past Saturday with this line in my head. Indivisible is such a beautiful word. And I thought, well, isn't that a great idea for a line in a song? And so I wrote this song. It's a song of thanks for Ezra Levin and Leah Greenberg for dreaming up this whole concept, this beautiful resistance that's growing and thriving. And for Francis Bellamy, the Baptist minister who included this word in his Pledge of Allegiance specifically because it was the end of the Civil War, such a fragile time for our country, as we are in another fragile time right now. So here's my song for all of this. And I'm going to sing a harmony part with the chorus so that you can join in with it and hopefully carry it on and add it to your local protests if you might. Indivisible. Indivisible is such a beautiful word, with the strength to change a life each time it's heard. A word of action, a word of power. Now it calls us here together in this crucial hour. Indivisible is a solemn vow to stand together in resistance then and now. Though hate is long with its familiar call, yet love is so much longer after all. When we sing indivisible, 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 always ours to hold, always work to do to help it all unfold. It was never a given, but it was always a choice to bind the dreams of many in one voice, one beautiful voice. When we sing indivisible, 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 indivisible. Yes, we're indivisible.
Welcome, everybody. Hi, my name's Marcy. I am with the Indivisible Illinois Exec Board.
I woke up bright and early
Oh, sorry.
on the morning of the No Kings
Just
March
a second.
past Saturday.
Just a second.
With
I
a-
need to stop something. Okay. Sorry about that. Anyway, so I'm at the Indivisible Illinois Exec Board, as are Linda and Jeanette. I'm from Champaign. Patrick could not be here tonight, and we have two wonderful speakers. I'm going to have Linda and Jeanette introduce themselves, and then we'll get started. If everybody could put their name and where they're from in the chat, that would be great. Go ahead, Linda.
Okay, I'll start. Linda Callis, as Marcy said, I am on the Indivisible Illinois Executive Board. I'm also on Indivisible DuPage leadership, Truth Brigade Illinois leadership, and also a precinct captain in DuPage. And if you haven't figured it out, I live in DuPage County. Jeanette?
Jeanette Quirk, I'm on this board and on the leads for Indivisible West Suburban Chicago and Indivisible Chicago Alliance.
Thank you. Yes, and tonight, just to let you know, that's that song that video was sent to us by somebody who was a friend of the person who wrote it and performed it, and the singer is named Claudia Schmidt. Some of you probably have seen it already. It's been circling around. So, but I just thought it was so awesome to put it as the beginning to this meeting. Anyway, but tonight we have a really awesome meeting. We have two speakers on different things that the state of Illinois is hopefully doing that will hopefully prevent the federal government from doing anything untoward to us. So, and I will introduce them in just a second. If you could all put your questions in the chat with question in in capital letters, that would be great. And Linda and Jeanette will field those, and we will have questions after both speakers have had a chance to speak. Okay, so just a second here. Okay, so our first speaker is Dr. Anthony Douglas. He is a general surgery resident at the University of Chicago, a public health expert and dedicated advocate for health equality. He created the nation's first surgical advocacy fellowship, a curriculum designed to equip surgeons early in their career to serve as change agents in addressing health disparities. He has led state and national advocacy efforts to lower prescription drug costs, including testifying before the U.S. Senate Judiciary Committee. Currently, he leads the coalition behind the Illinois proposed HB 3320, SB 2279, the Responsibility in Firearms Legislation Act, or the Rifle Act, which seeks to tie firearm manufacturers' profits to the outcome of their products in the Illinois communities. Dr. Douglas's leadership has been recognized through numerous honors, including the Emerging Public Health Leader Award for Health and Medicine Policy Research Group, induction into Phi Beta Kappa and Alpha Omega Alpha Honor Societies, a published author and frequent speaker. He brings a unique perspective at the intersection of medicine, policy, and social justice. Please welcome Dr. Anthony Douglas.
Thank you, Marcy. I just want to do a sound check. I sound okay? Yes? Awesome. Okay, I'm in the airport, so I apologize if you hear a little bit of noise over me, but thank you for this opportunity. Indivisible Illinois, Marcy, Linda, Jeanette. Was so excited to see some names I recognize. Jim McGrath, who's been a good friend to me and has been a part of this effort since the beginning, and so many others. I'll get in trouble if I start naming names, but really today want to spend some time talking about the Responsibility in Firearms Legislation Act. This is current legislation that is submitted.
Dr. Douglas, could you be a little bit louder? There are some people in the chat that said they couldn't quite hear.
Okay, I apologize. So briefly want to talk about legislation referred to as the Responsibility in Firearms Legislation Act. This is House Bill 3320 and Senate Bill 279. If it's okay, Marcy, I'm gonna share my screen. I think I have share permission, yeah? Awesome. Okay, you can see my screen okay, Marcy? Great. All right. You know, when Marcy talked to me about what this panel is about, and about the federal government's overreach of not only our state sovereignty, but also issues that plague our state, I thought this was the perfect opportunity to talk a little bit more about what is happening around gun violence and gun injury in our state. Many of you may be familiar with some of the federal cuts that have come towards gun violence prevention efforts in our state. The government cut about $800 million worth of funding that was already promised to states in terms of gun violence prevention. And approximately at least $100 million of those dollars were actually going towards community efforts to reduce gun injury and gun violence in our communities. Not only have we faced substantial funding cuts as a result of what is happening at the federal government, but also we've seen rollbacks in terms of the President Biden administration's control over firearms that were once illegal that are now legalized, such as sawed-off shotguns, silencers, firearms disguised as umbrellas, and other different types of firearms. Obviously, I don't have to tell everyone what these policy impacts and the actions of the federal government will have on gun injury in our country, whether it's suicide, violence, etc. But I want to talk to you all about a bill that is positioned to not only protect us from what has happened at the federal level, but to change gun injury in Illinois forever. Briefly, in Illinois, we've been talking to legislators as well as communities about who should pay for the cost of firearm injury. And many of you may or may not know that the cost of gun injury is extremely, extremely expensive. Approximately, gun injury costs the state of Illinois about $18 to $20 billion a year for the direct and indirect expenses of gun injury. And that is for, on average, the 6,700 people who are shot annually in our country. Meanwhile, the firearm manufacturing industry pays nothing for these costs annually. And who's paying for this is, of course, the follow-up question. And the reality is we, not only the injured, but taxpayers are footing the bill for the cost of gun injury, not only in our taxes towards Medicaid and Medicare, but also in private health insurance. For those of us who are on private health insurance, we pay through rises in premiums. The utilization of private insurance for gun injury has increased 4 times in the last 20 years. And so that not only impacts your premiums, but it impacts the premiums of everybody who is privately insured. Not only that, but hospitals, small businesses, and insurance companies are all footing the bill for this disease process in our country. Why are we paying for this? Well, the answer is comes from a federal law that was passed in 2005. In short, that is called PLACA. And what PLACA basically is a law that shields firearm manufacturers, retailers, and dealers from the financial consequences of their products. So if someone uses their products to cause any type of injury or harm, whether it's self-inflicted or to another, you can sue essentially anybody involved, whether it's the building, the person themselves. You can hold everybody financially accountable for the outcomes of that product, except the manufacturer and the retailer who sold or created the product itself. And what that means is we bear the cost as a result. When you don't pay for the consequences of your products, when you're free of liability, this is how you get to advertise, right? You advertise your products as rooftop ready and urban super sniper, and you advertise, selling as many assault rifles for common use in America as possible, right? And only an industry that is free of liability is allowed to market in such a way. So the Rifle Act, which is, again, House Bill 3320, Senate Bill 2279, shifts the direct cost of gun injury away from the wounded, their families, the public, and taxpayers to a no-fault fund that firearm manufacturers contribute to on an annual basis. And our objectives are really fourfold, and I'll briefly go through this. One is, of course, relief and support for the injured and their families, and relief from the state and public from the cost that we are all bearing for this issue. Secondly, is to reinstate accountability for this industry, the same accountability that exists in every single industry. I probably don't have to tell you all this, but I'll reiterate just how unprecedented the freedom of liability is in our country. Every industry in our country is held civilly liable for the outcomes of their products, or can be. This is the only industry in our country that has freedom from that liability. And then the last point I'll make is that this bill reduces our state budget deficit substantially, as our deficit, the number one cause is healthcare expenditure. So how does this bill work? It creates a fund that is authorized by the state that manufacturers pay into annually only if their products are recovered in an injury or death. And they pay into this in order for their products to be sold, distributed, or imported in the state of Illinois. Their contributions every year are equal to the medical costs and other direct expenses associated with gun injury. So every year, the total costs are calculated based off the previous year's expenses, the medical costs and other direct expenses, and the total cost changes from year to year based on how many injuries or deaths we have in the state of Illinois. The fund is the first payer of medical expenses, meaning no longer will Medicaid and Medicare foot the bill for gun injury, but this fund will pay for those costs. And some additional expenses that are covered include funeral and burial, lost wages, property damage, and other costs. In the first year, the fund sum is $821 million, which I know is a shocking figure to a lot of people, but it just speaks to how expensive this issue is in our state and in our country. 66% of that 821 million are the medical costs alone, which often fall to Medicaid and Medicare and private insurance. This is a costly problem. On average, being shot and hospitalized is an $82,000 hospital bill, and that's a conservative estimate. And so the majority of these costs are Medicaid and Medicare costs that we are trying to shift away from taxpayers and the public. How do manufacturers contribute into this fund? Well, it's based off of what a fancy term called experience rating, which essentially just means how many of their products are recovered in a year based off of the total number of firearms recovered in that same year. So the more products you have recovered, the more you pay into this fund. The less, if you have 0 products recovered, you pay nothing. So it's a very fair and equitable assessment for manufacturers, which will incentivize what we hope is better behavior in the industry. And I'll talk about that here in a second. Of course, the major implications of this are not only relief for taxpayers and the public, but also relief of our state government for the budget deficit that it's in. Again, I'll reiterate that the number one cause of our state budget deficit is healthcare expenditures. And by passing this bill, we substantially save our state in Medicaid and Medicare costs towards gun injury. And then what excites me most as a surgeon and a person who interfaces with this issue every day, that sees children, young boys and girls, men, elderly, people who are injured by this problem every day and killed by this, is that when we tie this industry, this manufacturer's profit to their actual outcomes in our communities, we can incentivize better behavior from this industry in a safer innovation, engagement with our lawmakers in terms of what we can do from a policy standpoint to prevent. And ultimately, we inspire this industry to reduce how frequently their products are causing harm in our state. And these are just a list of ways, but I won't go through all of these in the interest of time. What I will say is that the technology to make firearms safer has existed for over 20 years. The ability to add biometrics to their firearms, so only the person who owns the gun can fire it. The technology to trace products has existed, but the reality is this industry doesn't profit from making firearms safer. They profit from the danger, the trauma, and the fear that their products create. We are hoping that by passing this law, we can inspire this industry to engage in stemming illegal and interstate trafficking, safe gun storage, responsibly wholesaling to dealers and retailers, and initiating new sales practices that prevent the injury and death that we see in our state. What I'll say is that this is not the first time this approach has been taken. There are a number of ways in which we've seen these kind of funds created. Workers' compensation is one of the best examples. Many of you will remember over 100 years ago when you were injured on the job, it was your fault. You knew the risk of taking this work when you signed up, right? Until licensed businesses and construction firms were losing lawsuits, and there was no cap on what they would pay out for their injured workers. And so employers and businesses came begging for a solution, and that was workers' compensation, where they would make their injured employees as whole as possible, and in return, they would not be sued by their employees. We're asking for the same approach in the firearm industry. They've shielded themselves already from lawsuit, and now we're asking them to make the injured and survivors as whole as possible after injury, and just engage in safer practices in the same way that workers' compensation revolutionized workplace safety and drastically reduced workplace deaths. I'm probably over time, and Marcy's gonna kick me a little bit after this, but what I'll say is, this bill has been discussed before our state's attorney general and a number of other much smarter people than me and constitutional lawyers. We have talked at length about the bill, and again, this bill does not impact the Second Amendment because we're not talking about people's right to own firearms. We're just talking about who should bear the cost of firearms and holding manufacturers accountable for what their products are doing, which is the standard in our nation. Lastly, we don't violate the federal law PLACA, which prevents lawsuits, because this isn't a lawsuit. This is an act from our state legislature. Briefly, I'll just tell you, we've been building a ton of support, building a large coalition to support this bill. We have a lot of momentum in our state house. I just found out that we have about 24 co-sponsors in the Senate now. And just for reference, you need 30 votes in the Senate. And so we have nearly in co-sponsors the number of votes we need to pass. And that doesn't include the lawmakers who told us they would vote yes, but just are concerned about putting their name out there publicly. So we are very, very close to passing this in the Senate, and we're ramping up our efforts now in the House, but our leaders in the House feel confident that we can pass this legislation. I just want to say this briefly, and as I close, that now more than ever is the time for us to address this issue, because what is happening at the federal level is going to feed this issue in our community. When we talk about the affordability of everyday life necessities, groceries, healthcare, access to nutritional assistance programs, all of these things are drivers of gun injury and gun violence and gun suicides in our country. And as these dangerous and violent policies continue to impact us at a state level, it is going to drive this issue. And so we have to go as upstream as possible in addressing the root causes of gun injury, and accountability amongst firearm manufacturers is one of those major upstream issues that we must address. So with that, I know we're going to do questions afterwards, but I want to thank you all. If you're interested in following this legislation or receiving newsletters, this is a QR code that you can scan. And I'll just leave you with Margaret Mead's quote, that never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world, because indeed it's the only thing that has. When we started this, people told us this was a non-starter, that we're wasting our time, and we are farther than ever, and we're on the verge of getting the governor's support for this bill, and our legislators are really excited about moving this next session. So we love your support, excited to hear the questions about the bill, and thank you, Marcy and Indivisible Illinois, for your time.
Thank you, Dr. Douglas. That was awesome. By the way, Indivisible Illinois is one of the statewide coalition partners on this, so just an FYI. and I have Jim McGrath to thank for that, actually. So, okay, next speaker, Dulce Ortiz. Dulce Ortiz joined Mano Family Resource Center as Executive Director in April 2019. She was responsible for leading Mano and the implementation of their mission through strategic planning, programming, and community engagement. She leads in the development of strategic community partnerships and the policy advocacy agenda. Dulce has been actively involved with the nonprofit sector and has dedicated her time to serve as a board member of different social, environmental, business, health, and governmental organizations. She currently serves as the board president of the Illinois Coalition of Immigration and Refugee Rights, ICIRR, serves on the Community Trust Committee of the Illinois Supreme Court Commission on Access to Justice, Illinois Partners for Human Services Board, and IDHS Social Services Advisory Council. She previously served as co-chair of Clean Power Lake County, an environmental justice organization in Lake County, and in 2020, she was appointed by Governor J.B. Pritzker to serve on the Illinois Commission on Environmental Justice. In 2022, she was appointed to the Health and Human Services Task Force, and in 2023, she was appointed to the Hydrogen Economy Task Force. Dulce is the first Mexican immigrant woman elected to serve as Waukegan Township trustee since April 2021. Dulce holds a bachelor's degree from Robert Morris University. She is an advocate for the underserved and vulnerable population and brings her expertise and drive to empower immigrant families. She is an immigrant originally from Mexico City, Mexico. Please welcome Dulce Ortiz. Dulce, can you unmute yourself? Sure. Okay, Dulce, go ahead and unmute
Okay,
yourself.
got it.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Marcy.
Not a problem.
Thank you, everyone. It's such an honor to speak to Indivisible. I've been really also honored to have spoken before Indivisible Chicago Alliance and also the Northeast Lake County, Illinois Indivisible. So I feel like I'm with family. As you all know, we've been going through some really difficult times in our immigrant community. And I do want to provide you with a bit of context as to why we are advocating on the legislative during lobby session for our legislative priorities. Here in Lake County, we have a large population of immigrants. We have seen what has happened in the Southwest side. I'm part of the rapid response team. I'm pretty sure many of you have heard of rapid response teams all over the state. And one of the things that I never thought that I would have to use in my lifetime was, how do we protect our community from the federal government? And that's a really scary thing to think about, because when we think about immigrants, they came to this country for a safe haven. Many of them were being persecuted in their own countries. And it's not easy for a parent or anyone to just pick up and go to a different country where you don't know the language, you don't know the culture, but you're going on faith and hope that it will be better. And sadly, what we've seen these past few weeks is really the persecution of immigrant families. Really want to touch really quick on a story of a community member a couple of weeks ago. He was asked by his neighbor to help plant a tree in front of his yard. And this was in the morning. So he agreed. They were doing yard work, beautifying the community, neighbors helping neighbors. And it just so happened that that day we had the Border Patrol in our town. They lived off of a major street, high traffic area, and CBP just happened to be driving by. They stopped. The neighbors that asked for help were U.S. citizens. The neighbor that was helping was not. He didn't have immigration status. So the U.S. citizens told the neighbor to run. He could have ran home, but he knew that his wife who has no immigration status, and his two daughters that are DACA recipients would be in jeopardy. So he decided to jump some fences and try to run away. This happened in the morning at 8:30. I got the call at 1:30 from one of his neighbors. And based on our experience, when someone is disappeared, if they haven't called back, if they haven't made their way back home, and their phones are turned off, we're 99% that they have been kidnapped. And it was a really difficult conversation with the mom and the two daughters, because think about it. They went to sleep, and the next morning they're woken up by the neighbor, only to wake up to news that dad was gone. He was disappeared and he was not coming back. And so that's one of the many stories that we've been hearing over and over again. The way I explain it to people is like having your heart shattered every single day and finding the strength and the will to put the pieces together. And that's very difficult to do as an immigrant. It's a very difficult thing to do as a community. But the beauty in it, the glue that holds us all together, is seeing how everyone is coming together to help, to volunteer, to donate, to do advocacy, to be part of the rapid response teams. And that's what gives us hope, and that's what keeps us going. And so with that being said, one of the things that we're doing at the Illinois Coalition for Immigrant and Refugee Rights, we are advocating for our S.A.L.T platform, because we know that salt melts ice, right? But what it stands for is Safety and Action for Liberation Together. And so we've been working on a couple of pieces of legislation. If it's okay, I'd like to share my screen. Marcy, if you can give me.
You already have, you have.
I do?
You have
Okay.
access, yes, you're a co-host, yes.
Oh, it says host disabled participant screen sharing.
Just a second.
No problem.
Yeah.
So we have 4 pieces of legislation that we're pushing through the veto session. And the first one is protect our courthouses. So I don't know how many of you know.
You should be able to share your screen now. Go ahead and try.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so
Sorry.
much. No worries. Thank you. I don't know how many of you know that ICE has also been making arrests at courthouses. It has been difficult because they've also shown up at the domestic violence courthouses, which is really terrifying, especially for victims of domestic violence. And so the first piece of legislation, our sponsors are Representative Norma Hernandez and Senator Karina Villanueva. And so what we're trying to do is we want to shield our courts from interference and chilling effects that ICE arrests can create. And so we want to pass the Court Access, Safety, and Participation Act so that ICE is not able to conduct these arrests in courthouses. That's the first one. The second one is to protect healthcare facilities. I'm pretty sure many of you here have seen the arrest that took place of alderperson Jessie Fuentes as she was asking for a warrant from the agents. And so we want to make sure that the healthcare sanctity and privacy of our community members is respected. And so we want to make sure that everyone feels safe seeking the care that they need. And that's why the enforcement of ICE at hospitals is very problematic. Our sponsors are Representative Avelar and Senator Aquino. The third bill is the Safe Early Childhood Centers and Higher Education. So we passed the Safe Schools Law this past spring. And so one of the things that we've been seeing lately is ICE targeting daycare facilities and also community colleges, so higher education. Actually, here in Waukegan, we had a student that was kidnapped by ICE right outside the College of Lake County. And so we want to make sure that just as the Safe Schools Act protected kindergarten through 12th graders, that we have the opportunity to also add early childhood centers and colleges and universities so that all education settings will be welcoming for all. And then the last one I'm very excited about. This is something that the governor supports, and that's the right to sue for unlawful arrest and detention. So Governor Pritzker's office has developed legislation that would enable anyone whose rights, constitutional rights against unlawful searches, arrests, and detention have been violated. If the violators are masked, as we know most immigration agents are, the person whose rights are violated can seek punitive damages. And this bill will provide an important tool to hold ICE and CBP accountable for their abuses, which is something that we're not seeing right now. This administration, as we know, they're not accountable to anybody, and neither is ICE or CBP. And so what I'm sharing here on my screen, and I'm happy to share this on the chat, is if we can get your support to email your legislator, register, and support the ICIRR SALT platform. So I know we want to make time for Q&A. So yeah, just look forward to your support. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Ortiz. Go ahead. Yeah, thank you very much. Before we go into questions, couple things. First, I just want to mention we don't have speakers for this, but there were a couple also legislation passed that Governor Pritzker signed into law in August, actually in Champaign, where I live, because I saw it on basically reproductive health care. One was HB 3709, which was campus access to contraception and medication, which basically said, and this was written by college students. It said that all state colleges and universities in Illinois, if they have a student health center, they have to provide contraception and mifepristone or other abortion pills if necessary. The other one was HB 3637, expanded shield law and protection for medication abortion, and that is very extensive. It basically says that all healthcare providers, including physicians' assistants, offering reproductive and maternal health services from legal or disciplinary action, no matter, even in other states. It also safeguards access to mifepristone in Illinois, even if the even if its FDA approval is revoked, provided the World Health Organization deems it safe and effective. So in Illinois, they are really trying to protect us. The other thing I want to mention before we go into Q&A is I just want to make a few announcements, and then I will turn it over to Linda and Jeanette to get the questions going. For announcements, a few things. Number one, for those of you who are familiar with our phone banks, we still have 1 weekend worth of phone banks this year. On Saturdays, we had been phone banking to Virginia for Abigail Spanberger to be elected governor, and the last phone bank, because their election is this coming Tuesday, a week from tomorrow, that will be this Saturday at 5 o'clock Central Time on Zoom. On Sundays, we have been phoning into our 3 Republican congressional districts, the 12, 15, and 16, to let their constituents know that their members of Congress voted to cut Medicaid and what that means for them and their communities, and that we want them to call their members of Congress and tell them how unhappy they are and that they will not vote for them. The other things I want to point out are things that we are co-hosting. We are co-hosting a candidate forum on the IL-9 that's going to be on Zoom that NWSOFA Indivisible is hosting. Co-hosts are also Indivisible Evanston and Indivisible Skokie, and that will be this Wednesday, October 29th at 7 p.m. Central Time. Another town hall that's going to be in person that we're co-hosting as far as the congressional candidates go. It's going to be a forum on the IL-15 that's sponsored by Capital City Illinois Indivisible, and Jacksonville Indivisible, well, Indivisible Jacksonville on the IL-15, and that will be in Springfield on November 16th at 3 p.m. and that's going to be in person. And the other thing I want to say, because we're talking about the Rifle Act, one thing that Dr. Douglas may not have mentioned was that there's going to be town halls throughout the state on it. And the first one is going to be in Champaign-Urbana. And it's going to be on November 13th at 6 p.m. in Champaign. And I'm going to put links to all those in the chat. And for those of you who are indivisible groups, watch for the ones that are coming your way, and your group will probably be asked to be a co-host for that one. Now I'm going to turn it over to Jeanette and Linda so they can get the questions going.
You know, Marcy, can I do one more share?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Go ahead, Linda.
Okay, I'm actually gonna share my screen real quick. This will be very quick. Probably most of you have gotten this information, but sorry, may actually get to, there we go. But the No Kings Alliance, which is the groups that at the national level that came together to plan and get the No Kings rallies going, which was extremely successful. Everybody after that, of course, is saying what's next. And so one of the things that they've committed to is to have actions once a week that everybody can do to fight against what's going on in the Trump administration. So this is, I'm just showing you what it looks like, and I'm going to put the link in the chat. But if you go down, you'll see they'll say this week's action, and it's tell your story. So then they give you ways that you can tell your story about going to the rallies and why you went, etc. So if people are, you know, after the rally and you got very energized and you're looking for things to do, including what we're talking about today, but if you just want to know every week, hey, what can I do? Just make it a habit to go into this site. And I think they promised they would update it every Wednesday. So we just wanted to make sure everybody was aware of it. With that, I will stop sharing my screen. I will put that link in the chat, and then I'm going to go to questions. So just so everybody knows, that put questions in the chat. There are a few that probably are not relevant to what we're talking about today, so that those will not be asked, in case you're wondering why did my question get asked. The first one, this came from Brandon, and this is for Dr. Douglas. I think Jeanette put an answer in the chat, but I want to make sure you have a chance to really answer this. How can we support you and the Rifle Act? What all can we do?
Well, thank you for that question. I think the first and foremost, is contact your state rep and senator for your area. And I'm sure everybody on Indivisible Illinois knows how to do that, but if not, Google, you know, who's my lawmaker, and you can type in your zip code and it brings it up. Also, Marcy and Linda, I don't know, right now it says I'm not able to put links into the chat, but I do have a link that is just allows people to put their name and zip code, and it automates an email to their lawmaker. So if there is a way to change that, I can drop that link. But if not,
you should
no
be able
worries.
to put a link in. I'm trying to figure out what try it
That's
now and
okay.
see, because I'm
Is it,
not quite sure why that would be. I'm sorry if that is.
no, it's okay. It's not a problem at all. But I would say starting there. Okay, it allowed me to now, Marcy. So
Okay.
I will put a link that allows everybody to contact their that automates an email that can go directly to your state rep and state senator. The second thing you can do is I'm putting a link to a form right now that allows you to stay up to date with the newsletter and action items that you can take as well as some of those upcoming events that Marcy mentioned, if you're interested in partaking or joining in any of those events or action steps. So please join. It's a quick Google form. You just put your name, your email, and just indicate that you want to join the newsletter. And we can get you more up-to-date information on a bi-weekly basis on what is happening. But I would say the most immediate step is definitely please call your state rep and your state senator. We have a lot of momentum, but certainly, calls like this where people are energized and want to do something definitely make a difference. So thank you, Linda.
Okay, and I'm going to add one thing and make sure you agree with this, since we just saw what the No Kings group talked about, which is sharing your story. I'm assuming that it's fine that, or you would want people to share that link on their social media, so others who aren't on this meeting can learn more about it.
Yes, absolutely. And we do have a social media page on both Facebook and Instagram for those who are on any of those platforms as well, Linda. So yes, absolutely to that. And if you are on Facebook or Instagram, just type in Rifle Act Coalition on Facebook, or if you're on Instagram, it's Rifle_Illinois.
Okay, great. I'm going to go to one that I know. So obviously you are a great doctor. You're not a lawyer, but I'm going to ask you this question just to see if it came up. This is from George. And you did talk about, that people looked at the constitutionality of this, and those in the know definitely thought it would be fine. But the question was related to, very specifically, would it be nullified because it puts undue burdens on interstate commerce? So in any of your conversations, did anything come up about interstate commerce?
Yes, absolutely. So one of the, I think George, what he's referring to is exactly that, restrictions on interstate commerce, which we avoid because we're only regulating commerce in the state of Illinois. So we're just saying that if you want to sell, distribute, or import products on the shelves of Illinois, then this is what you have to do as a manufacturer or someone who engages in this commerce in order to sell products in our state. And so we're not infringing on their ability, or we're not regulating interstate commerce. We're just regulating the commerce that occurs within our state lines. Which I guess another point of this bill that I didn't mention, but when I talk about stemming interstate trafficking, because we know that a lot of firearms are coming in from neighboring states, that where the firearm is purchased actually does not matter in this bill. As long as the firearm is recovered in Illinois, then a manufacturer, we hold them responsible in the calculations for what they pay every year. So as long as we recover it, it doesn't matter where it's purchased, which should encourage manufacturers who find out that most of their products were bought in Indiana but recovered in Illinois to figure out exactly why that's happening and stem that interstate trafficking.
Okay, and when you say recovered, this is actually my question. I assume it means anytime there's some kind of law enforcement interaction, is it if the gun is taken away because there's some illegality around it, it was used in a crime, or the person shouldn't have it? Is that what it means by being recovered?
It means recovered in an injury or death, Linda. So
Oh, okay.
anytime law enforcement or our coroners um, collect these firearms associated with the injury or death, it counts towards the total, right? Because our goal is to remove the cost that those injuries place, the burden it places on taxpayers and the public.
Okay, thank you. This one I'm not sure if you know, but you may. Do you know if there's any other states that have either passed a law like this or are looking at it?
So this bill is actually being considered in a few states right now, in Colorado, New York, New Hampshire, as well as Michigan. So the discussion is being had right now at multiple states, and there's a lot of interest nationally about the bill, but it hasn't been passed anywhere. This model I talked a little bit about earlier exists in other industries. In the chemical and nuclear engineering industry, they pay into funds in the event that a catastrophe happens. In the insurance industry, insurance providers pay into a fund in the event that they go bankrupt and cannot provide the insurance products they promised. So this like this no fault fund scheme has existed in many industries and has helped to regulate industry behavior, but we have not taken this approach to the firearm industry. And so we're hoping by using this tried and true model that has been proven to help address, industry accountability, we can have the impact that it has had in every other industry as well.
Great. Actually, I'm going to expand. This is a question from Phyllis. I'm going to expand it a little bit. And I don't know, again, if you know the answer to this. Right now, for firearms sold in Illinois and any ammunition, do you know what the tax rate is for that? Just general sales tax? Is there any special rate, do you know? Or is it just any kind of, just similar to any sales tax?
I believe, don't quote me, but I believe our sales tax in Illinois is 10% on the sale of firearms. But I will double check and get that answer. But I believe it's 10%.
Okay, because I think the question Phyllis was getting at is when looking for ways to fund things that are impacted by gun violence, do you know if anybody has talked about having a higher sales tax for those for either guns or ammunition, or would that be dead in the water from a constitution perspective?
Now, one of the things that's come up because this idea of the excise tax bill has been discussed is the fact that it actually punishes legal firearm ownership, right? It doesn't actually address um, manufacturer accountability, and in fact, it just places the burden of accountability on individuals who go
Got
through the
it.
legal process of purchasing firearms. And so, by holding manufacturers accountable, yes, there's an impact on the price of a firearm. Not all of manufacturers will have that impact of an increase in firearm prices. Only those who have products recovered. But our goal is not to punish responsible firearm owners. It's just to reinstate the accountability that should have never been lifted from them in the first place.
So I think you should go in front of the Supreme Court when it gets there. That was great. Um, yeah, another question from Dawn. Is there an anticipation that guns would just no longer be sold in Illinois to avoid the fund?
That's a good question, Don, and I appreciate that question. Part of the research included looking at the financial impact on a firearm and what the cost pass through would be, and whether it would disincentivize manufacturers from engaging in commerce in our state. And we actually calculated some of the fund sum to make sure that we address that to prevent manufacturers from seeing being disincentivized to continue to sell firearms. We want them to stay in the state. We want them to continue to engage in commerce, and we also want them to pay into this fund, right? And so I think that part of the research and the fund dictating the fund sum also accounted for what is the financial impact to these manufacturers. And I'll say the one thing that we have working for us is that Illinois is top 10 in sales in the country for firearms. We sell about 500,000 firearms a year. And so manufacturers have a strong incentive to want to stay in the state and to continue to sell to Illinoisans here.
Okay, thanks. Okay, I'm going to move on to Dulce. Let's see. Let me make sure I'm looking at the question. I had this question too. This came from George, and I was kind of thinking about this. There was already some, and with Trump, who knows? It could have been a Truth Social post. It could have been an actual. I don't think it was a legislation, so it was probably a executive order. But he changed what places they could do actions in. So can you kind of explain how, if we're able to, get a law in that would stop the ICE agents at public areas like schools, courthouses, I forget the other two, hospitals. By making that a law in Illinois, how does that get around an executive order that says they can do it? Like, what's the law around that?
Try to unmute yourself now, Dulce. I think you should be able to. If you're not, okay, just a second. I'll unmute you because it just says ask to unmute. So you should be, I'm trying to figure out why you're not able to. Just a second. So, because you are a co-host and it does say ask to unmute. So ask to unmute. Okay. Can you do it now?
Got it. Yeah, thank you. So to answer your question, under the Biden administration, we did have, some protective spaces. Those included churches, hospitals, schools. But then again, with this current administration, that went, out the window, right? Just like every other rights that we have in this country, unfortunately. So what we can do on the state level, similar to ICIRR, what ICIRR has done for many decades to protect immigrant communities, you may know or not know that we don't have any detention centers here in the state of Illinois. And that is because, we passed a law a few years ago during the first Trump administration, because again, we knew that that was going to put our community members in harm's way. And so we don't have any detention centers. Broadview is supposed to be a processing center, but they are using it as a detention center. They're holding folks there from 3 to 4 days up to a month, where they're only supposed to be there from 3 to 4 hours, right? And so through our legislative process on the state level, we are able to create these safe havens, such as the bills that I talked about, right? The courthouses, early childhood centers, adult education, so and also hospitals. That's what we're trying to do on the state level, right? So that we can go ahead and, I don't know if we want to call it bypass the executive order, but to ensure that our immigrant community is protected here in the state of Illinois. And just like we also passed the Trust Act that prohibits law enforcement to work with immigration enforcement officers. Again, it's just protections that we're providing here on the state level through state legislation.
Okay, thanks. I'm guessing that might eventually end up at the Supreme Court also, as everything does.
As the Trust Act, yeah, the Trust Act, yep.
Yep, okay. This is a question, let's see, actually, Jean had this question. If we witness an ICE detainment, so the average citizen, they're out, they see it happening, what is it that we can and should do in that situation?
Well, the first thing that you should do is call the 855 number. I did put in the Family Support Network hotline. I put in the link there. It gives you a lot of resources, not only the Family Support Network hotline, but also Know Your Rights cards, printable fact sheets, and the ICE on ICE alerts. So the first thing you should do is call the 855-435-7693 number to report the activity or even ICE sighting. What happens is when you call this number, it'll activate your rapid response team from your area, and they are trained volunteers that can go and verify ICE activity. But also, as rapid response team members, our job is to observe, document, make community aware that ICE is in the area, and also de-escalate. And so we've seen time and time again how a recording is so helpful, especially in the media and through the courts, because we know that DHS is always lying and is always blaming community residents, right? They call them protesters, but if ICE is literally outside your door and they're kidnapping folks, obviously you're going to go outside and see what's happening, right? So it's not like you're volunteering to go to a protest if it's happening right in your street. So we encourage folks to call that number, report it, and then after you're done, start recording. Start recording and exercise your rights. You have the right to record. You have the right to tell them to go home. And unfortunately, they don't like it when you make their job uncomfortable. They want to do their job as peaceful as possible to kidnap as many folks as possible, unfortunately.
Okay. I'm going to ask Dulce this one. This would be actually for both Dr. Douglas and yourself, Dulce, but I'm thinking with your background, you might have know this better. For trying to push our lawmakers to do something, in this case, to support legislation from both organizations, is it better to call, email, or write an actual letter?
If you're able to request a meeting with them, whether it's in district or through Springfield, um, also there's a lot of advocacy days in Springfield. Typically, person to person, it's better. But if you're not able to do in person, use all the avenues that you can to make sure that they know you're trying to reach them and that they know that you're trying to support a specific piece of legislation.
Do you recommend if you, and this, well, this could be Democrat or Republican, it's hard to tell sometimes who will support something. Um, if you've tried to convince your representative to do, to support any of these bills, and they very specifically say they won't, do you think some kind of more targeted protests against them works?
I would say just target them, period. I know that phone banks are very uh, useful, phone banking. So having, a group of folks just driving in calls to their office, driving emails to their office. And yeah, I think that a more targeted approach, I mean, you could do a protest in addition to, but we found that phone banking, and again, just as I put the SALT platform on the chat with a link that you can register to drive emails, encourage community members, encourage your network to reach out to those specific legislators that you're targeting. That is a better approach than just protesting outside. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yep,
I would
appreciate
add,
that.
That's
if
what
I
we found useful.
can I add, Linda, that,
Yep.
I think that it's important when you have your lawmaker in particular that is saying no, is the best time to really not just protest, but organize and to build, communities and networks that of people who are very passionate about that issue and begin your outreach in terms of building more and more support, whether it's through events, word of mouth, calling your neighbors, talking about it at church or your local community event. Every lawmaker is motivated by getting reelected. We all know that, and so the more of that lawmaker's constituency that you can influence and inspire to call them and tell them, hey, your constituents, your voters want this, the more they have to bend to the will of the people, right? And so I would say, in every instance where we've had lawmakers who, have told us no, we've went to their constituents, we've talked to their constituents and told them, this is affects you, this is important to you. And by word of mouth or by, organizing or by events, we've built support and we've moved and bent lawmakers into neutral or proponents because of that. So I just really, really encourage folks, if you get told no, go back to your community and start talking to people, rile people up, get people excited, tell them to start calling, emailing, and doing all the writing the letters. And then I think eventually the next step, if they don't bend, is sometimes requires escalation.
Got it. Thank you. That was helpful. I already asked this question of Dulce, but there was a second part to it that I kind of missed. So as a neighbor, or when something's happening in the neighborhood, and you've talked about how people should respond. So I just saw and I'll give an example, and I think I just read this, that there was something that happened in Chicago, not surprising, where tear gas was used right around the time that kids were going to do their Saturday trick or treating. And so the question that somebody asked was, as a, just a community member who's being terrorized, obviously not as much as the people that are being disappeared, but it's still your community. Do they have any legal actions they can take, or is that not recommended?
Like I said, unfortunately, right now, the only way that we can hold them accountable is through the courts, right? And the media. And so we know that there's been a couple of cases where, example, the judge told DHS, they made the decision that you're not supposed to use chemical weapons against protesters. And if you are, you have to give 2 warnings. Well, right after that, I think a week later, Bovino was seen throwing, chemical weapons in Little Village, not giving a warning, not saying anything. And so right now, the only thing that we have in our power is to be able to record and to be able to, put that online, give it to the media so that the court is able to see that these, you know, I don't even know what to call them, to be honest with you, that they just continue to trample on our rights and they continue to just terrorize communities.
Okay,
I
thanks.
wish I had a better answer.
Yeah, no, it's eventually I feel like everything's at the Supreme Court, but maybe not. Um, have you seen, this is Dulce again. We definitely are seeing a lot going on in Chicago, obviously, and in the surrounding areas, but is it pretty much all over the state where this increased enforcement is happening?
So where we're seeing um, significant immigration enforcement is in higher, immigrant population cities, villages, right? Here in Lake County, we have a higher concentration of immigrants, Latinos in North Chicago, Waukegan, Round Lake, Mundelein, and also the western part of the county, which is more towards Round Lake, Fox Lake, Wakanda. So that's where they've been targeting. Yes, Highwood as well. Um, so we know that they've been targeting the Lake County area. We know that they've been in Carpentersville as well. So anywhere where you can find, farming, urban areas, high concentration of Latinos, that's pretty much what they're targeting. Yes, Elgin, Aurora, Little Village, Cicero, Berwyn, um, Brighton Park, I believe. So that's where we're seeing, and one of the things that I do want to note on here is that these folks are, terrorized. What I've had to tell our community members, our immigrant community members, is it's not safe for you to be outside your house. As I said, this neighbor that was helping his other neighbor, he was doing yard work in the morning outside, the next house, and he was not safe. We've seen them kidnap folks at grocery stores, at gas stations. Um, we saw the killing of a father after dropping off his child at school in Franklin Park. Um, so it's not safe for them to go outside. And we have a lot of families in dire need because they can't leave their homes to go to work. They can't leave their homes, just everything that we do, that we take for granted, just being able to go outside. They can't at this moment. We have families that haven't left their homes, and it's going to be about 7 weeks now.
So I have another question as I was thinking about, so there are areas that maybe see this on television, but really are not impacted, right? And so similar to the share your story that we talked about with No Kings, um, is there like your website is ICIRR's website, would there be are there a lot of stories on there where if somebody just wanted to share with a family or friend who just thinks this is not a problem. I don't know what the issue is. These people are not here. They're not documented. Why should we care? Is that a good source for somebody to just share those kind of stories with people that just aren't getting it?
Yeah, so the S.A.L.T platform, the link that I had put on the chat, which I'm going to put on the chat again, you
Mhm.
can see, obviously they're not in detail stories. So just for example, it talks about in the last few weeks, ICE has murdered a beloved father and community member in Franklin Park. They also talk about the raid that happened at the apartment complex on the south side of Chicago in the middle of the night, where women and children were zip-tied with barely any clothes on, and just the use of chemical weapons against community members, what's happening at the Broadview Processing Center, and then the attempted shooting of a community member on the southwest side, leaving multiple bullet holes in their cars. So it talks about these things, and it's sad that there's thousands of stories. Just really quick, Mano, one of our team members, um, unfortunately, they had their uncle kidnapped yesterday. And you want to know how they found out? They found out because they saw a Facebook post with somebody saying somebody left this truck abandoned on the side of the road.
Oh, God.
And typically that's for us Latinos, that's what we use, right? To say somebody has been kidnapped. Who does this truck belong to? So they saw the uncle's truck there, and obviously, they were scared. They started calling the uncle. The uncle was not answering because typically when they're kidnapped, their phones are turned off. So he was kidnapped around 10 o'clock in the morning. Didn't hear from him until 8 o'clock at night. So he was disappeared for all those hours. And they found out through social media because the truck had been left on the side of the road.
Every time I hear anything, my heart is breaking, and I'm not impacted at all personally, but just as a US citizen, I it's heartbreaking. I'm going to turn it over to Jeanette to see if there's anything I missed that we need to ask.
Um, yes, just a question that was just put in the chat from Dawn, talking about any, do we know of any groups, aid groups that are organizing laundry, groceries, etc.? I think a question a lot of people are asking, what can I do to help families and so on?
Yeah, one of the things that you can do is you can reach out to your local nonprofits in the area or your local rapid response teams in the area. Typically, rapid response teams are either being led by the nonprofit, just like Mano, we're leading the work in rapid response, or are working in partnership with, a nonprofit or other nonprofits. So I would say that first, look at who's doing the work on the ground, who's on the front lines. And those are the organizations that are in need of dire help, because not only do we need all hands on deck for volunteers to do the rapid response work, as you can imagine, folks that have, their green cards or folks that have DACA, we don't allow them to serve as rapid response volunteers because that is a high risk. They're risking to get their immigration status taken away by the government because they're trying to protect the community. So this is for white allies that say, I'm going to put my body on the line. That's who should be volunteering for rapid response teams. In addition to that, like I said, there has been families that haven't left their homes in weeks. They can't go to work, so they're in need of food, basic necessities, medication. So again, those nonprofits within your community that are doing the frontline work, they're the ones that need most of the help right now.
Thank you. That's the only one I had there, Linda.
Yeah, I would just add, just looking through the to the chat, somebody had mentioned, and this has been brought up before, that food banks, contact food banks. We heard that some food banks in our area are actually delivering food to people who are afraid to come to the food bank. So people that had been going there. So that's another option, not only donating to the food bank, which of course, probably starting Saturday, SNAP is going to disappear. So this is just generally saying give to the food bank, but also see what is needed from delivering groceries. So that's something everybody can do, or most everybody can do. Oh, thank you, Dulce. Yeah, Dulce mentioned when when you donate food, and I would say ask the food pantry, what are they looking for? Because that's a true statement. No matter what food pantry you're giving to, there are certain things that they know what's needed by the community. So it's good to ask, as opposed to, hey, I'm going to go through my pantry and see what I don't use, which is okay, but as long as it's something that can be used by somebody else. Okay, I will just ask Dulce, you first, and then I'll go to Dr. Douglas. Is there anything more you want to add that we did not talk about?
Um, I would just want to thank you all for providing the space to share what we're seeing on the ground and just letting you all know that this is a call to action. This is a call to action, whether you can volunteer, whether you can help us through the SALT platform, contact your legislators. We need all hands on deck because, again, they start out with the most vulnerable, but it doesn't mean that you're not next. We know how this fascist administration is. And so they're attacking the most vulnerable. They're trampling on the Constitution, on our rights. And so we need to fight back, but we need to do this in unity and we need to do it all together. So thank you.
Thanks. Dr. Douglas?
Thank you, Linda. What I'll just say is, we have to end the profitability of our own trauma, right? And I think right now, a lot of people don't realize is that this firearm industry is profiting off of the fear and the trauma that their products create in our communities. And until we switch the incentive where they don't profit off of injury and harm and fear, then this trauma, the violence, all of this will continue to occur. And so, now more than ever, we need to recover our taxes. We need to stop allowing our taxes to go towards subsidizing the cost of firearms. And we need to hold this industry accountable for the financial outcomes it creates. And I'll be remiss, Linda. I hope it's okay if I ask Jim to say something. He and I have worked very intimately on this, and so I'm sure if I miss something, he'll fill in the gaps.
I appreciate that, Anthony. One thing I want to make sure everybody understands, this is not a gun control bill. Don't use that term, because if you do, the Rifle Association will come after the bill. It's not a gun control bill. The other thing I want to say is, I have a Republican senator that I talked to a week ago. Every email that she puts out, she's put something out about how she's saving us money in taxes. So when I talked to her last week, I said, Darby, I got a bill that could save the state millions. Every Republican person legislator in Illinois will talk about saving taxes. That's how you approach this bill with them. You can get Republicans on board, tell them and then if they don't go along with it, you've got something to come back at them with, because then they're really not about saving money with taxes. So I just want to say that. But the other thing for regarding the fast rapid response groups, I was out. I did an hour and a half tonight. We have a multicultural event at a high school tonight. We're doing proactive. We're getting out there before the ICE shows up. We did one in Carpentersville Friday night. ICE did not show up, which is, if you have a rapid response group in your area, volunteer for it. Hopefully it will be boring. It's been boring for me, which is exactly what you want. But do it. Don't sit on the couch.
You rock, Jim.
Yeah.
So, oh, by the way, I just want to add to something that Jim just said. My state senator is a Democrat, but my state rep is a Republican, a moderate Republican, and I have been working at trying to get a meeting with him, and specifically said that this would not hamper the Second Amendment, and it would also raise money for the state. So, and they do have, they did have me on their docket. We'll see if something comes up of it, but that's exactly how I'm approaching it too. So Jim, you rock. Anyway.
Gotcha. Yep.
Yeah, so I just want to I want to just real quick do announcements one at a time, but before I do, I just want to again thank you, Dr. Douglas and Ms. Ortiz. You guys rock. You are awesome. I'm so grateful that you came, and we all are. And now I'm just going to real quick do announcements one more time and put the links in the chat. Again, this is going to be the last weekend for 2025 for the Indivisible Illinois Phone Banks et al. We're going to take a 2 month hiatus after this weekend to January, and it's going to be Saturdays. We've been for several months. We have been phoning into Virginia for Abigail Spanberger for governor, and we are going to do it one more time before their election this Saturday at 5 p.m. Central Time on Zoom. On Sundays, we are calling into the 3 Republican districts, congressional districts in Illinois, telling their voters that their members of Congress voted to cut Medicaid, what that means for them and what that means for their district, and telling them to call their member of Congress to tell them how irritated they are with them and that they will not vote for them if they keep doing this. And then for the forums that we are co-hosting, there is one on Zoom this week on Wednesday, the Illinois Candidate Forum, Wednesday, October 29th, 7 p.m. And like I said, it's on Zoom. The host is NWSOFA Indivisible. Indivisible Illinois is co-hosting along with Indivisible Evanston and Indivisible Skokie. There's another town hall that's going to be for the L15 congressional candidates, November 16th in Springfield. Indivisible Illinois is a co-host for that. It's hosted by Capital City, Illinois, Indivisible, and Indivisible Jacksonville. And again, talking about what Dr. Douglas talked about, the very first town hall that's going to be on the Rifle Act is going to be in Champaign-Urbana. So I am very excited about that. It's going to be November 13th at 6 p.m. in Champaign. And so I will put all those links in the chat one more time. And then we will, after we have a chance to look at them, we will adjourn. Just a second. There we go. Anyway, so thank you, everyone. And our speakers were wonderful. We are so grateful for them. I saw the thumbs up, Betsy, and Debbie. So anyway, and thank you all. Hopefully, we'll see you at one of these events. And two are in person, but the others are virtual. So you could go from anywhere. Have a great day. Thank you.